Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Voice of Authority webinar, brought to you today by the developer Top Hat and contractor Jerem Falkus. My name is Toby Fox, and I'm the Managing Director at 3Fox, the marketing agency for councils. As regular viewers will know, our job is to keep our network of councils and developers and investors and their influencers and advisors connected. And one way we're doing that is through this channel, the Voice of Authority, a platform for councils to discuss their ambitions and challenges and influences and issues of urgency. We've made way from our normal Thursday slot this week to allow for tomorrow's Hertfordshire Forward conference on inclusivity and diversity. But we'll be back next Thursday, turning our attention to drones with a conversation on urban air mobility and the risks and opportunities for local authorities. We're going to be discussing the revenue potential for councils to be licensing red routes through their airspace and collecting fees from rooftop charging points and converting car parks to landing hubs and consolidation points for last mile delivery. We'll also be asking who's liable if a drone is operating in your airspace and falls on someone's head. So join us with law firm Davitt Jones Bould and transport consultant Vectos for a groundbreaking session next Thursday, December the 3rd at 11 a.m. Before that, on Wednesday, the 2nd at 4 p.m, we're asking what happens when the clapping stops, how to house our heroes, and we're offering local authorities the chance to bid for a new £100 million key worker homes fund. You don't want to miss either of those sessions, do you? So register for them now at thevoiceofauthority.co.uk. Now then, it was only a week ago that we were here with the Minister for Housing talking about build homes, build jobs, build innovation. The report into modern methods of construction by Mark Farmer of Cast Consulting and Mike Diath at HTA Design, which government is now taking forward. Cast and HTA are the go-to firms in this field, so when Barking and Dagenham wanted some intel on offsite manufacture, it was only natural that the council and its development company, Be First, would turn to them. Barking and Dagenham is delivering a significant pipeline of housing and is invested in modern methods of construction. It's already delivered modular homes. But like other local authorities, it faces a market comprising a confusing array of suppliers and options, with plenty of good stories, but a puzzling record of delivery. So the council commissioned Cast and HTA to produce a strategic report to answer three key questions. Firstly, who out there knows what they're doing? Secondly, what's holding the industry back? And thirdly, how should councils approach and support the MMC industry? To answer those questions and launch the report today, I'm absolutely delighted. We've got two of the report's much in-demand authors, Rory Bergin, partner of Sustainable Futures at HTA Design, and Jeff Endine, director at Cast Consulting. And to help us understand what Barking and Dagenham's already delivering through MMC and how councils can best support MMC developers, it's a pleasure to introduce Sarah Beth Riley, Associate Architect at Be First, and Jordan Rosenhaus, the Chief Exec at Top Hat, our headline sponsors today. Before that, we're going to learn how the Mayor of London is incentivising MMC generally and council collaboration in particular from the Deputy Mayor of London for Housing and Residential Development, Tom Copley. And we're going to hear what's the art of the possible in terms of councils working together to support MMC from Andy Berridge, Head of Construction at Ealing Council and the future Director of Development at Broadway Living. So thank you all for joining us today. We very much appreciate you sparing your time to share your insight and experience. But before we get to you, first of all, welcome to the stage, the leader of Barking and Dagenham Council, Councillor Darren Rodwell. Darren, can you set the scene for us, please? Can you set out some of the aspirations for your borough and for London councils that lie behind your commissioning of this report?
Thank you very much, Toby, first of all, and welcome everyone to this discussion. And it should be a discussion because that's what we've been having now. As I do the merry-go-round of different panels, it's always discussion, discussion, discussion. Barking and Dagenham's attitude is in our crest, and it says, "In God we're judged by our deeds." In other words, stop waffling and get on with the ruddy job. And that's what we have to do. In Barking and Dagenham, we've probably got the biggest single house building programme in London with around 50,000 homes in the next 20 years. And those homes have to be built out in many different ways, but the standards have to massively improve. And we say that because we have seen what's happened when we don't use the right standards in the right ways. We've had our own issues here with Samuel Garside So whilst I was on stages with Mark and found myself agreeing with him from Cast, and making sure that talking to Mike DeHare at HTA and Tom, we were all discussing the same thing. How can we improve the development and the productivity of house building in London? I live on the Becontree estate. It's going to celebrate 100 years. They built 27,000 homes over 12 years. They had horse and cart in those days. Yet we're just not doing the same. So what could we do to improve that? So this report is a milestone, and I'm pleased that Tom and his team have taken a look, and they're contributing, because at the moment we are London's biggest single borough in build and supporting especially the affordable council rent product. So what I want to see is an MMC council product, because actually I can't see why we don't. At the moment, we're in the space of VHS, Betamax, Video 8, and all the other different scenarios that you could get if you take film back in the 1970s and 80s. We're in that same place with MMC. I'm fed up of people telling me, yes, we can do this and we can do that. What I want is a continuity that links into things that we've learned from the past, like the Becontree estate. We got it right there. We then used that model and then rolled it out across London and the country. I want to see the same for MMC. And this is a really important part of the jigsaw that we're putting together. So as a single borough, yes, I could do it all myself, but I want to see this work pan-London and actually local government. Because if we can get the right product, and we know that actually the supply chain is the same no matter where it is, it's got to make that product cheaper and quicker to produce. And again, we can have localized factories that can make sure that we produce the right standards, and it has a bigger input into our community. The green situation is then sorted because we're not trialing it across the country, and we've got local supply chains. And at the same time, obviously, we're making sure that it improves local people's lives in being able to reinvest the money from wanting to build into the local economy. So that's really, in a nutshell, why we've done it. And ultimately, it very much has come as an urgency, because we've got a scheme in Padnell Lakes, as I know it, up in Marks Gate, which is about 300 units. And it scares people when I talk about 300 units, but actually I want to be talking about thousands of units. And I'm really pleased that Tom also buys into the vision of what we can do and how we can do it for London in the first instance.
Fantastic, Darren. Thanks a lot. And is there a role for London councils in your sort of ambitions for MMC?
Absolutely, as I said. So I can do it just as Barking and Dagenham, but I also have another hat, which is the lead for housing and planning for London councils. So again, I'm talking to colleagues about this whole issue. And the fact of the matter is, if we can get it right, if we can get the right product, then actually every council would come on board with it. We in effect could be the biggest supplier. And that's what I'm looking at. How do we become the supplier that works for the community and business and industry, as well as London generally?
Fantastic, thanks, Darren. So let's ask Andy in Ealing then about what the art of the possible is here. Andy, there's a call for local authorities to collaborate to stimulate demand for MMC, and we're going to hear shortly how that's expressed in the report. And what's the art of the possible there? How much collaboration can there be? Can you envisage Broadway Living, which you're going to be Director of Development for shortly, cooperating with Be First in Barking and Dagenham on schemes to support MMC?
Yeah, morning everyone. Absolutely, I can. I think in terms of collaboration, it's a tricky one because it's too easy to carry on doing what we've always done, and I think it's a combination of a number of small things, actually, not any one particular thing. You have to, with MMC, you have to plan to do things differently, and that takes time and resource. I think if we were able to collaborate in terms of our land holdings, develop an overall program that we were able to offer to the market, that would be more of of more interest, I think. We have to be working with contractors that understand the MMC route, and that's always been challenging. There's a massive array of different models and systems out there that we can use, and it's picking your way through that and coming up. I think personally, a framework with a selected number of providers, suppliers on there, which all of the local authorities are prepared to sign up to, would be a really good thing, because it just there's a lot of research that goes into these things. I've been to many factories over the years, and actually some of them I wouldn't really want to be putting my own money into a product that comes out at the other end of them, and that has to be a prerequisite of what we're doing. The quality of the product that comes out at the other end needs to be way better than it is now. So lots of different systems, land holdings. I also think there's a huge amount of expertise and resource within the local authorities, and again, rather than reinventing the wheel, we all need to be collaborating a lot more to draw that out, and things can be done a lot quicker as a consequence of that. I think the challenge with committing to a much bigger program is then you get in, and a fewer select number of suppliers, is that potentially you're then moving into a problem where you're trying to reserve manufacturing slots, which impacts on the program, delivery program, that kind of thing, and that I think is something that we need to look at. So capacity is potentially an issue, but definitely collaboration is the way that we're going to make that transition from what we've been doing over the last 20, 30, however many years. You know, since the Egan report came out, we've been talking about MMC, and we haven't actually crossed that threshold, have we?
So what's the next practical step that you'll be taking, Andy, in order to make collaboration happen? What needs to happen?
So we're members of West London Consortium, for example, 7 West London authorities. That's a very good opportunity to raise MMC up the agenda, and to start those discussions around suppliers, volume, you know, land holdings, what we might be able to put together to come up with a sort of sustainable program of delivery over the next 5-10 years, really, rather than looking at it as we've all done short term. You know, we've dipped our toe in the market from 2016. We've done some temporary accommodation using shipping containers and so on, but nothing of any scale. And I think in order to get the benefits of MMC, we need to be doing things at scale, and you can only do that if we all join forces and make that possible, I think.
Great stuff. And just before we come on to the GLA and what the mayor's looking to do, Darren, can I come back to you briefly? You've dipped your toe in the water as well, and I say you with your London Council's hat on, with the Place project. What's happening with that? And is that a blueprint for collaboration going forward, or does something else need to happen?
So again, the Place project is important. The thing with London councils is we acknowledge and respect the fact that we are our own space, if you like, which is always an interesting place to be, because you've got to make sure that people feel that there's a benefit to them locally in whatever you're trying to do. Now, Place is a good start. Again, it's what Andy just said. We keep dipping our toe in the water, but you know what? We all need to have a bath at some point. And it's really important that we understand the product. And like I said, there's many manufacturers. We'll probably use 3 or 4 in Barking and Dagenham. But I want the system. As I said before, I'm looking at the Becontree estate today. It was 16 different house designs, yeah, but everything in them were the same. And that's where we want to get to, because good design means you can reproduce it in a way that works for the community. And it's really important that we're able to come up with what we class as the local government MMC product. Now, who builds it is irrelevant. It's just we've got to make sure the product is right for what we want. Now, ideally, I'd like to see local government get involved in building some of it. As I say, we can do that circular economy. It's really important. And it's ridiculous at the moment that you know, that we don't have a factory in London. Again, I have the land, I'm looking at it. I want to work with people on this. It's not that we want to take over the world, but it is saying we are the biggest customer. So we've got to know what our strength is. And our strength is we're the only people really building probably in the next 5 years, because with everything that's going on with the economy, with the ACM issues, you know, the whole issue with RSLs and the private sector, it's going to be hard for the business world to carry on, for developers to carry on doing what they're doing in the way they're doing it. So, but we want to say collectively as London councils, we're here. So whether you're in Barking and Dagenham or Ealing, you know, we're at different ends of the pendulum of London, you know, we can work together to bring the outcome that benefits Londoners and the business community. And again, with the support of the mayor. And that's really important that, again, we're able to do this collectively.
Absolutely. I'm sure Jordan isn't thinking that whoever builds it is irrelevant, and we'll come to you, Jordan, shortly. But first, Tom, we need to get in the bath. I don't know whether the GLA, the mayor, is pouring the water or putting the plug in, but you tell us what's your role.
Well, firstly, I think what Darren just said about the important role that local government can play in development, you know, who's going to be building, that is a really important one. And it might sound strange after sort of 10 years of austerity to say that you know, local government is in a good place to do this, but local government's in a very different place to where it was in the previous recession, where councils weren't building, they didn't have their own development programs, and the GLA didn't even have its devolved housing functions. Now, you know, all of that's changed. You know, pretty much every borough in London, almost every borough, is building. And the GLA has got, you know, our affordable homes program, our new affordable homes program, which is going to come on to our land fund, you know, much stronger place. You know, we want to shoulder more of the burden, actually, if the government will provide us with more resource, which again, I'll come on to. So I really welcome this report, and I think it's fantastic that Barking and Dagenham have commissioned it. You know, Barking and Dagenham are one of the most ambitious and innovative boroughs in London. And it was great to visit recently with Sadiq, to go down and visit the Gascoigne estate, to see some of the new development that's going on there. And of course, to sort of celebrate the fact that Barking and Dagenham are now our biggest council housing delivery investment partner. Now, I think with more than 1,500 homes in their programme. And you know, that is absolutely fantastic. And it's great to be able to speak to you as well in the week that we launched the new prospectus for our new affordable homes programme. And you know, while we recognise that the size of the funding settlement the government has given London, you know, is inadequate, the mayor is going to be placing a strong focus within that on both affordability and quality. And MMC is going to be a big part of the new AHP. MMC is one area actually where the mayor, the GLA and the government are actually in alignment in wanting to promote it. So there's going to be a firm focus on MMC in the new AHP, with incentives for partners to bid and submit bids for MMC projects. We also are going to welcome bids from partners that aim to aggregate demand for MMC systems, including those that can demonstrate a clear delivery pipeline. And we're going to be encouraging in general and on MMC collaboration between larger partners and smaller partners. And recognising too the differences between traditional build and MMC. In some circumstances, we're also going to be allowing earlier drawdown of grant in order to match the cost profile of MMC projects. The mayor's also determined that we're going to be driving the delivery of a new generation of social housing, which will set the standard nationally when it comes to design, sustainability, and building safety. And all the schemes funded by the Mayor, including those built using MMC, are going to need to comply with some stringent new requirements in relation to building safety and design and sustainability. And these additional requirements are going to make sure that any schemes built through MMC, through our AHP in London, are going to be safe and going to be well designed, and to dispel any remaining myths that still sort of exist around concerns around the quality and the safety of MMC. You know, this is going to really drive forward quality, dispel any lingering sort of concerns about that. And in relation to the new sustainability, in addition to the new sustainability requirements, we're going to be explicitly encouraging bids where it can be shown that MMC has been used to support the circular economy. So including design for disassembly, promotion of reuse and recycling of materials. And we know that there's a key role for MMC to play to deliver against the Mayor's broader green recovery agenda. And we're very keen to support partners who are championing sustainable MMC developments. Data as well, we're also going to be collecting important data on the use of MMC through the programme, so requiring all partners, including boroughs, to submit data on the types of MMC they're adopting on their schemes. So this should help to create a new detailed evidence base about what MMC typologies work best for London and to help shape our future support for the sector. And while we do recognise the particular productivity benefits of modular, we want to encourage all forms of MMC across London. And finally, I've got to mention PRISM, especially because Jeff's on the call. You know, the Mayor's very keen to promote the take-up of MMC beyond just our affordable homes programme. So to that end, we launched a new version of the PRISM design app together with Bryden Wood and Cast. That was back in September. And for those who don't know PRISM, it's a free open source design app which accelerates the design process for MMC developments in London. It draws from manufacturer data to highlight where there's scope for standardisation, and it integrates data from the London plan to show what might be realistic for London sites. And we know that some boroughs are already using PRISM actively, and London councils is supporting Cast and Bryden Wood to roll out some training to boroughs as well later this year to support its use. So, just finally, I think as we emerge from the pandemic, I think this really is the moment for MMC. And, the Mayor is going to continue to work to help drive its take-up. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with innovative boroughs like Barking and Dagenham to drive forward this agenda.
Fantastic, Tom. That's a real raft of measures there, and certainly putting the money where your mouth is in terms of the Mayor's support for MMC. You talked about sort of there's financial support for aggregating bids. What are the practical steps that need to be taken to bid for some of that money? What needs to happen between now and when next year?
Well, I encourage everybody to look at the new Affordable Homes Prospectus, and anyone who's interested in bidding to get in touch with the relevant area team at City Hall. I think some of the stuff that Darren's been talking about as well, about local government coming together collaboratively, is going to be really important. And when Darren says we've got perhaps some land in Barking and Dagenham, whether it's for a factory or some sort of assembly logistics plant or something like that, I think that's really exciting. And that is something that I think that we at the GLA would want to be working with Darren, with boroughs, with London councils, Big L, Big C, to explore the potential for that as well, to to potentially have a sort of distinct local government production line, or collaboration between boroughs in order to drive demand in that particular area, because we should be working together to create that pipeline and to hopefully benefit from economies of scale as well.
That's fantastic stuff, Tom. Thanks very much. And Jordan, we'll come to you shortly to respond to these measures and see how you're representing the entire sort of development industry here. So it's a heavy burden for you to carry, but to respond to those measures and tell us whether or not you feel they're welcome. But before we get to that, let's get to the report. Now, my colleague is going to pop into the chat for viewers a way in which you can get hold of a copy of that report, which is being launched today. Be First, Barking and Dagenham have very kindly said that they will make it available. So there'll be some information on that going into the chat shortly. But before that, let's go to Jeff Endine and Rory Bergin to talk us through this new report. And in the first instance, to give us a review of the market. This is the most comprehensive review ever, I've been told, of the MMC market. And then secondly, to run through some of the issues, perhaps capacity, as Andy mentioned earlier, tell us what the real issues are that are holding the industry back. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Toby. So good morning, everyone. What I'd like to do in my quick segment here is to pick out some of the key messages from our report, which is quite in-depth and lengthy. And I just want to set the strategic framework really for how we've gone about the work and how that's guided the recommendations that have come out the other side of it. Before I dive in, I just thought it's probably worth saying how much actually I enjoyed working on this project in partnership with HTA, bringing together a range of skills between us in CAST and HTA and with their particular design specialisms. And also with my own background, previously working in local government and delivering housing and MMC, it was really helpful and interesting to be part of a project like this, where I think Be First and Barking and Dagenham have definitely gone about this in the right way, asking big questions and doing it at the start. Which is the right way to get to scale and to bigger answers than to where we are right now, which is not bad, but it's still a series of smaller projects that tend to happen on a one-off basis. And as I go through this, I want to try and pick out some of that messaging that we've picked up in the report. So Rory, if you could move me on to the next slide, please. In undertaking this work, we basically had three streams of activity. We brought together the knowledge and intelligence that we had in CAST and HTA of the MMC sector. We work with a lot of the businesses all the time, so we and deliver projects with them quite a lot as well. So we have good expertise and insight into the sector already. We worked with the Be First team and Barking and Dagenham to really understand what was driving their strategy and what good would look like. And then the other thing we did, which is what I'd like to pick up on here, is we did really extensive engagement with the MMC supply chain and built with them and Be First then a strategy that would work and could be delivered, we think. And 5 themes that I picked out that came out of that I think really important in framing the strategy, which I've listed on the screen. And I think that the first thing is that we need to start from an understanding of the current output from the sector, because understanding where we're starting from is really key to setting what the strategy should be from here. And I think it's worth saying that if you think about modular, which I think volumetric modular delivery, which is what most people think of as MMC, the volumetric boxes that are mostly completed in factory, output's still quite low on those, about 3,000 homes a year currently being delivered from that sector. There's much more happening in the framing sector, with about 40,000 homes a year being delivered from things like timber and steel framing solutions and things. Some of those are slightly more traditional though than what you might think of as MMC. Now, the reason that's important is because when we think about what practical steps can we take, we need to understand that the market is starting from a reasonably low level of output and needs to manage growth. And I'll come back to that point in a second. I think related to that those manufacturers that are delivering about 3,000 homes a year at the moment from their modular factories probably have capacity for about 15 or so thousand. So there's a lot of available capacity, we think, across the country, across all of the manufacturers. And that's an important point, because when we think about what intervention we might make and how does everyone come together to grow the sector, that capacity needs to be used in a sustainable, managed growth kind of way before too much new capacity is added. And I'll come back to that in the end, because there's going to be a lot of capacity for growth in the future. If you look at the work that Mike Diath and Mark Farmer did in their report recently, the Build report that was one of the more recent of these sessions, there's capacity for that number to increase to something like 70,000. So there is potential for growth over the long term, but in the short term, in terms of short-term actions, I think it's important to start from managed growth. In terms of partnership, what we heard from the manufacturers was kind of unanimous support for partnership with local authorities. And to echo some of the comments that have been made before, there's a really strong understanding among manufacturers of the potential that partnership with local authority has, because of your long-term perspective, because you take a view on quality and have a need to meet that means that you want to deliver high quality homes. And because of the potential, as was mentioned before also, that in a downturn, the capacity that will come from public sector delivery, particularly social housing, can be counter-cyclical and give stability of demand into factories, which is exactly what they need. So that's a really positive starting point, and actually creates the platform for partnership. If the aggregation happens and the partnership happens in the way that's been discussed, there's definitely an appetite amongst manufacturers to engage with that. In terms of what they need, I think the biggest single thing is the visibility of pipeline and demand. We talked to them about what other things might be involved and how much that might be, and there's various numbers around that. I mean, you probably hear a number of about 250 is the moment at which manufacturers particularly think they might be interested in strategic conversations. But the bigger point is to have visibility of demand and a partnership around the product. Is the potential, for them to be able to grow their own business. We talked to them about whether investment would be helpful, and there's never a bad thing to have investment into a business, but the demand pipeline will unlock private sector investment. So the starting point has to be around demand and how demand can be created and brought collectively to the manufacturing sector. And so then the final point is collaboration, because I think there's a lot of potential in this space, and we've touched on it already quite a lot through the conversation. But collaboration can mean a lot of things, and I think we're starting to see other types of aggregation coming forward, such as a Building Better platform of housing associations, which has recently gone out to tender, and there's definite scope for a local authority version of that, creating a local authority specific product that can be developed by a number of manufacturers, certainty, which brings standardization, which aids manufacture, and there's a quid pro quo there that will benefit manufacturers and local authorities at the same time. So that was the basis on which we started to think about, well, what's the way forward here then? And if Rory, if you move me on. We also thought it really important to touch on the barriers, because there are barriers, and these barriers are again another argument in favor of collaboration, because we've listed 10 here, which tend to be the 10 that are most important barriers to growth of the MMC sector at a structural level. And these range from different uses of language, which the MMC definition framework has started to address, a lack of evidence, which Homes England and others are starting to address, and was picked up also by Tom about what the GLA might do, and other factors that are really important, that are bigger than what might be dealt with by any one body or even a group of bodies, like the asset finance market, insurance and warranty market. These are bigger issues that need to be tackled. And the point being that you can't tackle all of these alone or in partnership, but what you can do together through collaboration is learn together, build an evidence base, and share knowledge and understanding to take on the ones of these that can be dealt with. And I think the biggest in here is around that tenure diversity and the ability of social housing to support supply on a sort of structured, standardized output kind of way, which works really well with manufacturing. So then if we lead on to my final slide before I hand to Rory, who's going to get a little bit more granular with how we recommended moving forward and what aggregation might look like in detail. One thing that we wanted to get across was what the options might be, to think into what can you do here. So the starting point is do nothing, and by do nothing I don't mean do nothing at all. I mean do what happens right now, which is a series of one-off projects, which aren't bad. They're good. They get all the benefits of MMC on their own, and probably a series of one-off conversations between buyers of MMC and the manufacturers. That's good, but only going to take things so far. And has been mentioned throughout this, the big first step, the foundation step that has to happen, is to move from 1 to 2 and engage in a strategic, collaborative, and aggregated way with the MMC sector. So that means aggregating demand, it means standardizing where possible what's being asked for from the manufacturers, and engaging with them at scale, collectively and collaboratively, rather than as a series of one-offs, which don't really work for anyone. They don't work for the manufacturers, and they don't work for the local authorities that are having those conversations. That's the really important starting point here. And what that will unlock are the future options, which have also been mentioned. As the sector grows, there's huge potential for growth in manufacturing. That might happen in lots of different locations and in lots of different ways. But that opens up, once you have that engagement and that scale, it opens up partnering, which is one option, and even investment. And those sorts of models become possible in the future. But I think the point we're trying to make here is that you can't really jump from 1 to 3 or 4. The really important first move to make this practical is to jump from 1 to 2 and collaborate and aggregate. And at that moment, I think I'll pass to Rory, who will carry on with the more detail of our work.
Thanks, Jeff. And the bin lorry has just arrived outside my house, so apologies if there's any weird noises in the background. So we engaged with a lot of manufacturers, both volumetric and panel systems, and asked them really how they felt about the current market and looking ahead and what the future for them looked like. So all of that information, we sort of collected, and then we had sort of further more detailed discussions with a number of the manufacturers that we thought sort of offered the right sort of mix of things like sort of financial standing, technical ability, interest in the market. Weirdly, there are some very capable manufacturers in the market, but who are not interested in the residential sector. They see the residential sector as being too risky for them, and perhaps they've got a good business in education or healthcare or building prisons, and the residential market doesn't look attractive to them because typically the residential market brings them small, probably quite complex projects with a team who haven't done it before, and they don't see that as being something that they're interested in engaging with, or they see it as being too difficult for their businesses. So having evaluated those, then we recommended a number of manufacturers back to Barking and Dagenham and Be First to consider engaging with in the next stage of work, at the same time as engaging with the rest of the London authorities and with the GLA, because as Jeff said, what manufacturers are interested in, they're interested in a continuous pipeline for them managing the upswings and downturns of a very complicated market is very, very difficult for them. So if we're going to make MMC happen, we in the market, the buyers in the market, we need to change our behavior to enable the right things to happen and to deliver all those benefits that Tom was talking about in terms of sustainability, particularly efficiency, productivity, and so on. So the sort of interesting thing was that all of them said that they're interested in expanding production capability, even though very few of them actually have topped out their production capability now. But they're interested in having other factories close to London because this is where a lot of the action is going to be. But they need a certain amount of demand, and they need a reasonably guaranteed pipeline because the scale of the investment needed to create a factory is fairly large. So nobody is going to make that investment without some certainty. But interestingly, most of the larger manufacturers can access finance. So they don't need finance from local authorities. They're perfectly happy to find the finance themselves in the market, but it's the demand that they need to justify it. In terms of the typology, then I think while many clients say to us that they want something a little bit different from this or a little bit different from that, in the end, a lot of housing is quite similar. And we've done a lot of work on working with clients on designing for manufacture and assembly, which sort of reveals, as the GLA and others have done through the PRISM map, there's a lot of commonality actually between typologies of housing. But at the same time, we want good quality housing that's going to be valued and attractive in the long term. So it's the skill of bringing together the manufacturing with good quality to design is where we need to get to jointly. So working together to develop from a master plan scale down to block typologies, apartment typologies, and then down to components. An approach and a mindset that starts from the beginning of the project and works its way right through to the end. And that then presents a demand to manufacturers, which is very clear to them. Whether they're a small manufacturer making shower pods or whether they're a large manufacturer making volumetric components, we can present our projects to them in a way that they can understand and in a way that they can engage with. But it needs to start at the beginning of the project. All too often we are shown projects by clients who say, we'd really like to get involved in the MMC market. Can you take this project, which we've already got planning permission for, and can you deliver it? And the answer is usually no, because this is a mindset. It's not something you can tack on at the end of the project. So looking ahead, we see a huge potential pipeline of work for manufacturers through the affordable housing program. We see huge opportunities for local authorities to engage. And what I would say is that working together collectively, aggregating demand, learning together at the same time is a much more fruitful activity, rather than lots of people doing lots of different small engagements, small prototypical projects and so on. We've done all that. We've got the learning from all of that. We don't need to keep on doing that. What we need now to do is to scale up.
Fantastic. Rory, Jeff, thank you very much for that. And thank you, Rory's Waste Collection Services, for being so considerate as well. You're blessed there, Rory. There's a question come in from the audience, and viewers, apologies, we've got such a packed panel today. We're blessed with that, but that does mean that our ability to interact with you is somewhat more limited than normal. But I hope we've got time for a few questions, and one's come in from a disruptor. We've got an anonymous attendee, which is often a bad sign, but in this side, in this context, quite interesting, because it's a disruptive industry, and they're asking, have you looked at open source at all, Jeff, Rory, in your study? Is there a place for open source in this industry, so that councils can learn from other local authorities, developers can learn from other developers, and share knowledge that way?
Shall I take that one, Jeff? I think there is a place for open source. I think a lot of manufacturers are confused about the value of IP, about intellectual property, and they think that their future hinges on a particular build-up of a wall or a particular connection capability. And while that kind of R&D is valuable, it's not where it's not where the goal is. The goal is delivery at scale of large projects, and actually the processes and capability required to deliver at scale is a completely different thing from traditional contracting and traditional delivery. So I'd say, yeah, open source is helpful, and with CAST and BSI are hoping to develop a publicly accessible specification, a PAS document for offsite, to help to describe, I think, what that question is about. You know, what are the rules of the game? How do people engage? So it plays a part, but actually the processes required and the mindset required are more important.
Fantastic. And one last question that we had before this session was around frameworks. We've heard Andy talk about frameworks earlier. Was your perception that from the development side that there are too many frameworks, there are not enough frameworks, the frameworks aren't of the right specification?
I'll take that one, Rory. I think so. I think the frameworks that exist are positive, and they give a route to market for manufacturers, which is really important. I think I would see it more as how do we build on what we have already, rather than anything else. And I think the way to build on them is for the framework to be seen as a means to an end, which is in some of the existing frameworks as well, and to get into much more close partnership with the manufacturers that are selected through frameworks to create that visibility of demand. And as Rory's been talking about, the full DFMA principles, manufacturers need to be engaged from an early stage through a framework, have visibility of sites, be able to engage with them so that their products work best for them, and not simply use the frameworks for as a means to procure a project once it's already got to a certain design stage. So I'd say this is more of an evolution of the frameworks. And again, just to go back to building better, I think that's the sort of space that they're aiming to get into with their framework, and hopefully we'll see more of those sorts of things. And there's definitely a space for building better in London, Be First and Barking, Dagenham and London local authorities to look at whether there's an option for them to do something similar. That was definitely one of our recommendations in our work.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot, Jeff, and thanks, Rory, as well. Jordan, you've got loads to choose from. We've got your response as a developer to the support that the GLA is offering. We've got your response to Darren and Andy's call for local authority collaboration to build demand for you, and your response to the report findings in particular. I guess there are issues of procurement that you might like to explore. And I've got some other questions around the kind of insurance and warranty. Where would you like to pick up? What are you most exercised about as an MMC developer?
Toby, thank you for having me today. This was a great panel, and I'm learning a lot myself about what the market is looking for. There's so many things to cover. I don't know where to begin. I guess the first thing I would say is that, to use your words when you started, Toby, there's a confusing array of players in the market, and with mixed results on delivery. And I think, the better question here, rather than what we can see from councils, is what can really local authorities see from MMC in general? What can we do to inspire confidence in our sector? Because there's a lot of different methods around MMC. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. There's a lot of different outcomes. And I think as we mature as a sector and more homes are successfully put in the ground on time, within budget, the market will generally feel better, it will grow. And I think we're still at the nascent stage. I think what complicates things more than anything, though, is that we tend to believe that MMC isn't as difficult as it is. And so we feel like we can have, a wide array of players in it. And I think to be honest, when I read about some of the frameworks in the paper, I'm just kind of blown away by, what's being signed and why. This is very similar, this space, to really any other manufacturing or industrial space. When you want to go buy something, the best thing, of course, is to go to a factory, see the factory, see the production, if you can. If not, you go see the finished product. You see the homes in the ground, you see the quality, the level of design, it's right there. You don't listen to people who say, oh, if you give me money or you give me orders, I'm gonna do this for you. Because I'll tell you, I know the feeling. I was there 5 years ago, but you gotta do it first, you gotta do it successfully first. And there's too much confusion in the market right now, because I think too many people believe that anybody can just open up a shed and say, hey, we're gonna do something in MMC. A lot of capital has to go into this market, into a business, in order to get the cost and quality levels necessary to make this panel happy. It's not going to happen quickly. Startups need that access to capital. And, is there room for more than 5 players? Absolutely. Is there room for 100? No. And I think that we have to be cognizant of that. In terms of just delivery, I would say we like to keep things simple at Top Hat. We focus on our product, which is why a lot of you probably haven't seen me at some of these events. But at the end of the day, we want to give customers certainty of really 2 things. 1, cost, and 2, delivery/quality. That it'll be on time at the levels of quality that you expect. And we provide turnkey contracts for that. And you can come to Medway. I'm working with Jeff's team at Cast. We just did a development there that's closing out next week. Come see what we've done for a local authority. I hear, Darren, I'll take up your invitation. We have best-in-class funders. We have a product I think you'll like. We're happy to invest in Barking and Dagenham. Haven't heard from you yet, but if we can exchange information, that would be great. We're looking to expand, and we've been quiet because we wanted to, I guess, walk the walk before we talk the talk. And we think we're at a position now to show people that what we can do. And, again, open invitation to anyone who wants to come and see it firsthand.
Jordan, do you find that you're, as a relatively new company, a relatively young company, is that an issue for you in going through sort of procurement procedures with the public sector?
Absolutely. I think with some of these procurement procedures, there's kind of like 2 different, it's very binary. You've either been in business a very long time with a long history of delivery, or you're kind of grouped into you haven't done anything. I think because of the age really of some of these modern MMC businesses, the newer ones, there's something that we have to have in the middle. Sure, we haven't been around as long as some of your tier 1 construction companies. We don't have that history of delivery. But again, you can't group all of us together as in saying, oh, so you're the next tier down, which is haven't really done anything. We have to be more cognizant of the fact that these young businesses are going to have varying degrees of delivery history and capability.
I'm going to play that back to Darren, Andy, and Tom shortly. But just before I do, Jordan, what about insurance and warranty? That's come up in the discussion already. And I was talking to a major real estate insurer earlier this week. And they were saying there's still a great deal of uncertainty and doubt around insuring offsite produced product, that the market doesn't trust it yet. Is that an issue for you, or was he exaggerating?
I don't think he's exaggerating at all. We haven't seen it yet ourselves. We've had 6 different high street banks lend against buyers in one of our developments. Nobody's been rejected yet because it's MMC by a lender, but I do know that it's a very real issue. I've heard stories myself. So it's something that, you know, as a group, we have to get together and resolve and find out the reasons why, so the market feels comfortable.
Great stuff. Jordan Rosenhaus, Chief Exec at Top Hat, thank you very much indeed. I mentioned the company's name because George Bridle is after it and may well be in touch with you. George, just look behind me, it's Top Hat. Darren, Tom and Andy, we've got issues around the covenant of many of these young companies. Darren, in term when you're dealing with developers coming to you looking to do business in Barking and Dagenham, as Top Hat surely will, are you looking for companies with a long history of operations? Is that an important part of your procurement process?
Not for me personally, no. Quite frankly, I don't care as long as you can deliver. I don't care if you're established or you're a newbie. And I work on the basis that, and I've just seen something in one of the questions Jamie's put, yet another client talking about factories. Yeah, I am talking about factories. The reason being is the marketplace isn't where it needs to be to deliver the outcomes we want to see. So yes, we do have a procurement of what we want to see, and that's why this report's been produced. Let's be frank with you, Top Hat sounds wonderful. If I could get to Medway, I would. But the fact is, it's in Medway, it's not in London. The biggest market that there is in London. So someone's got to wake up and smell the roses here. I'm a developer who's going to develop around, with partners, 50,000 homes. That's the size of York in the next 20 years. You want to be where the action is. This is where the action is. Across the whole of northeast London, we're going to build the size of Amsterdam. Okay, that's over 200,000 homes. If you can't make a business model stack up and work with the local authorities, then there's a problem with business, isn't there? There ain't a problem with the local authorities. We are the biggest customer going forward, certainly in the next 5 years, probably the next 10 years, because actually it's going to take local government investment supported by the mayor and Tom to make it happen. Now, we covered a lot of things. If we know that a product is what we want, I don't care how long you've been in business, as long as you're going to give me what I want. It's the reason why I've managed to deliver what I've managed to deliver in 5 years, just over 5 years. Okay, I weren't in the business of running local government before this job. The fact is, though, I'm doing a bloody good job at it, and I want the businesses that understand how to work with local government across London and the UK to flourish. We can all moan about things not happening. What we've got to look at is how we're going to make things happen. This report is the next stage in that. It's going to help the mayor on what needs to happen there. At the moment, we have National Government with Homes England lined up on it. We've got the mayor lined up to it. And we've got the forward-thinking councils like Ealing, ourselves, Enfield, if I use Enfield, up in the top end. You know, we're all thinking about it and we all want to work together. If you can't make a supply chain with the product we want, that's not our problem. But nor are we going to wait around. We want to get on with it. So I'm more than happy. Top Hat, I look forward to it. And, you know, working together with them. We've already used 3 or 4 different providers. We've already made, I think it's probably around, well over 100 and something units, which I know Sarah will be talking about. I've got another 300 ready to go, but I'm waiting for the business side to tell me. And I'm looking at thousands in the future.
Fantastic.
Come on.
Darren, it's an open invitation to businesses, young or old, to get down to Barking and Dagenham and build some homes. And we're going to hear about those homes that are already being underway from Sarah very shortly. But Andy, just to give you a chance to respond to Jordan's comments and also thoughts on the report in as quick a time as possible. Do you see covenant of developers as an issue? Do you see warranties and insurance as an issue? And you've got experience, of course, in the RP sector as well in your background.
I think actually it's a real double-edged sword, because we've all got cabinets and boards that we need to give reassurance to in terms of financial covenant for organisations. I suppose the thing I would say is that the one way that we've got of minimising the risk of a manufacturer going belly up on us is to make sure that they have the throughput and the pipeline of work to be able to sustain their businesses. So, you know, it is an issue, and I think it's not something that we can ignore, but it's something that we would work with the manufacturers to get reassurance that we need. The pain that we would go through for a supplier to go belly up part way through a project would be too much to bear, quite honestly. So, you know, it's not an area that we want to get into.
Yeah, maybe there's a role there for London councils, for GLA and other bodies in terms of sort of protecting you from that sort of eventuality. But that may be a conversation for another time, because we want to hear about what's actually being built. Sarah Beth Riley at Be First, tell us a bit about what's actually being delivered by local authorities, by Barking and Dagenham.
Okay, hello everyone. So fundamentally, if we just go back to basics for a second, Be First exists to build homes and communities for local people. And really, we just see MMC as another way of building buildings. But there is a catch. MMC really requires a clued up client and new ways of thinking about how we go through all the things that we've discussed today. So finance, procurement, all that stuff. So earlier this year, Be First set up their own in-house design team. And we are in a position to kind of monitor the golden thread of a project from early brief development, which we put together in-house, which may or may not include MMC scope, through strategy, design, and guardianship. So we're able to monitor quality through the whole process, but we're also here to learn lessons and improve systems. And we really believe that that is where MMC can help us to achieve our design ambitions and high quality. So I'm just going to walk you through firstly 5 kind of key points of where we feel MMC can respond to our needs. So firstly, and as Darren rightly pointed out, our most important thing is putting residents first. So residents shouldn't know and probably don't care if their bathroom is a pod or not. What residents care about is that their home is delivered on time and meets their needs, it's high quality and they enjoy living there, and also that they can afford it. And we all know that the MMC buildings can be more sustainable and therefore tackle things like fuel poverty. But what's also interesting in terms of residents is the opportunity for customization. So for residents to be able to make their own houses, their own homes. So secondly, we do not want buildings which fit in Manchester, Sunderland, or Watford. We want Barking and Dagenham buildings in Barking and Dagenham which respond to the history and character of the place and meet residents' needs. So that is why Be First design team work with the best architects and design teams in our field to really ensure that the bespoke elements of buildings which are required are delivered on. Next, we as a local authority need to look after our buildings because we retain all of our built assets in perpetuity. So MMC coupled with BIM can really help us with our asset management strategies. We can understand how we need to look after them in the future and how much we need to spend on that and when. So we can plan for the future and we can make sure that our buildings look and feel as good in 60 years' time through MMC. Next, early on, LBD declared a climate emergency, and to be honest, building buildings is probably one of the most unsustainable things that you can do. So anything that we can do to kind of target that is for the better. We're currently delivering 0 operational carbon buildings, but we're really struggling with embodied carbon at the moment, and that's where we think MMC can step in alongside BIM and digital twins, so that we can make decisions really early on and incorporate those decisions in our brief for our design team. So we can really analyze it on a kind of elemental and granular level to make those decisions. And finally, MMC allows us to get cozy with our supply chain. So there's nothing we like more than discussing with manufacturers and suppliers how they can meet our ambitions and how we can influence them to meet our ambitions. And we feel this is an opportunity to drive quality across the industry and set new standards. There's also, of course, as Darren mentioned, the opportunity to work with local supply chains and local manufacture and bring jobs to Barking and Dagenham as well as places. So to summarize where we've been, we know MMC is a great idea. We are 100% bought in. We have put time and money into the research, but we're also willing to test things. So this example shown on screen is 200 Becontree Avenue, designed by Archeo, and it was originally supposed to be a CLT structure, but due to kind of developments around fire, it got exchanged and it is now being constructed in a traditional way. So we have faced issues. We have tried things, we've faced issues, but we try other things. And we keep going and we keep pushing forward. So at the moment, we're currently looking at, on Gascoigne West, we are installing those bathroom pods on site that we discussed. At Padnell Lake, which I noticed is shown on Rory's slides, we're looking at a pre-manufactured panelized facade system. And for the Padnell Lake houses, we're in discussion with Ilka Homes about delivering a volumetric modular solution for the townhouses. So I think in summary, you can see that we are doing things. We're trying to roll this out across all of our projects evenly. It's not kind of a bespoke project here and there. We're looking at projects and we're seeing where can we include elements of MMC to create a hybrid system. And all I would say for the future of MMC and Be First is watch this space. Thank you.
Fantastic, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed. So local authorities are delivering. We've heard about a significant report today into MMC to unlock the opportunities for the sector and to help councils understand the role that they can play in doing that, to build better homes and build them quicker. We've heard from Barking and Dagenham and London councils that they think it's time to stop waffling and get on with the job. That's Dagenham Direct. And we've heard from the Mayor of London that through Tom Copley, that now is the moment for MMC. So we'll look forward at the Voice of Authority to following the progress of the sector over the coming months and years, and we'll look forward to reporting back to you on that progress. But in the meantime, that is the end. We've used up our hour. Our viewers have to get back to their Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and possibly even lunch if you can squeeze it in. Thank you for your tuning in and for your attention and for all your questions. We'll be putting unanswered questions to the panel by email and hopefully circulating any responses that we get through our LinkedIn members group. Before you go, viewers, please could you join me in thanking our fantastic panel today for sparing what is really precious time these days, more than ever, to share their insight and their experience and to open up this privately commissioned report to share it with local authorities and partners in the private sector. Thank you on viewers' behalf to Rory Bergin from HTA Design. Thank you, Andy Berridge from Broadway Living. Thank you, Tom Copley, the Deputy Mayor of London. Thank you, Jeff Endine at Cast Consulting. And thank you, Sarah Beth Riley at Be First. And thank you, Darren Rodwell of Barking and Dagenham Council and London Councils. And of course, thank you, Jordan Rosenhaus of Top Hat, both for your contribution to the conversation today and your generous sponsorship of the event. I look forward to meeting you, knocking on the door at Barking and Dagenham anytime soon. Most of all, as ever, viewers, thank you for paying attention, for tuning in, for providing your questions today. We couldn't do this without your attendance. We'll be back next Tuesday at 4 p.m. with the new £100 million Key Worker Homes Fund, and next Thursday at 11 a.m. with David Jones, Bould and Vectos on the risks and opportunities for local authorities of urban air mobility. You can register for those and watch the video of this session and all our other sessions at thevoiceofauthority.co.uk. If I may say so myself, we're getting a bit of a name for covering new territory, and we've got many more groundbreaking events emerging over the next few weeks. If you'd like to get involved in those sessions as a sponsor, as a speaker, please email me, toby@freefox.co.uk. Until next week, from our panel, from Top Hat and Jerem Fulkus, from me and from everyone at Three Fox, good afternoon.